Hey, what's up, everybody? Locked On Badgers. It is official visit season. I got a great guest on today, and we're going to talk about the big names you got to know, who might commit, and just some of the other maybe under the radar players coming to Madison. You're not going to want to miss it. All that and more in today's Locked On Badgers.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ryan Herring's your host of Locked On Badgers. Thank you so much for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day and making us someone that you've really started to embrace. And as we build this Badger community, again, we're going to talk official visits. Have a great guest coming on. We're going to bring him on right now. Matt Belz joins the show, Fan Nation, Sports Illustrated channel. And I've talked about this before, guys. Badger fans are spoiled with the content creators that we have. Matt Belz is obviously an integral part of that, someone who's always active on Twitter, a great voice for Badger sports. Where can people find your work, Matt, so they can continue getting a little smarter with the team we all love?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Twitter at SavedByTheBells. Otherwise, on our site, it's allbadgers.com or si.com/colleges/Wisconsin.
Such a good Twitter handle, by the way.
Thank you.
So good. So I wanted to just jump into it, man. Again, the goal for the show, and Matt, I don't know if you've ever heard it before, but I always try to get smarter people on the show than me. I think you're probably getting one of those people. And just to generate discourse, talk Badgers, build the community. And official visits are coming up. This is a huge weekend for the Badgers. We got another official weekend coming up after that. But for this show, we're going to specifically talk about the June 3rd visits, everybody. What are some of the big names, Matt, that are coming into Madison this weekend that football fans need to know about?
Yeah, this is an absolutely loaded slate for the Badgers. I think that it starts with Tackett Curtis, just one of the best linebackers in the country, 56th overall player in the entire country, 6th linebacker out there, plays primarily safety for his high school team, but really just comes downhill out of Louisiana, 4-star guy. He's also considering Ohio State, USC, LSU. So it's kind of a who's of his recruitment right now. But he's a guy that definitely is kind of the crown jewel, the guy that if they could land him, it would be the biggest win. But they've got 3 big offensive linemen coming in as well. Wisconsin offensive linemen, right? Like it's a perfect fit. But Joe Crocker out of Tennessee, 6'6", 310 offensive tackle, another guy that I think Wisconsin fans should definitely know. He's been on campus earlier. And really, I think those two are probably the top dogs. But I mean, there's so many guys that you go down the list. Khalil Tate, Zach Ortworth, a couple guys, Tate out of Chicago, Ortworth out of Missouri, just a couple areas that Wisconsin has really prioritized here in the 2023 cycle. So a lot of 3-stars, but upper tier 3-stars that the Badgers are battling a lot of really good schools for.
Yeah, I want to go to Tac first. We talked about Tac Curtis on the show quite a bit. We had his head coach on the show talking about him, a guy who Wisconsin has been on forever. They prioritized incredibly early. Bobby April's been awesome in that recruitment. Is he, and things always change in recruitment or in recruiting, different names pop up. Is he really the only, I would say, upper echelon blue chip prospect currently Wisconsin is in on? I mean, realistically in this class.
For sure, in terms of these visits that are happening on the 3rd, Wisconsin just got a big visit from Braden Marshall, kid out of Florida, for June 10th. He just announced that yesterday night, really late at like midnight. But he's another guy that I would consider, just because he's a Florida kid, 4-star, has offers from everybody. I would say he's probably the other major blue chip that the Badgers are in on. You could also say Ian Reed, offensive tackle out of Texas, but really, I mean, Tac Curtis is one of the best players in the country, and he would be the biggest get if the Badgers could land him.
Let's just play the hypothetical game and say the Badgers land Tackett Curtis. Where would he rank on the greatest recruiting wins in recent Badger history?
In all honesty, on the defensive side, I don't think that there's another guy, because you consider he's coming out of the South, out of Louisiana, was a guy that had all the offers. Like everyone down South, everyone in the SEC wants him. if Wisconsin won, it would be because of the hard work of Bobby April. And like you mentioned, he's been down there so many times.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in general, like you can point to a lot of the offensive linemen that the Badgers have landed here recently, but a lot of them were Midwest guys, offensive linemen where Wisconsin has a track record. This is a kid that you're pulling out of the South that had offers from anywhere he wanted to go and could open up pipelines because his dad's a head coach and AD as well down there. So I think that he would, like you said, be probably the biggest one, especially on the defensive side in a while.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think with the offensive lineman, you're talking about Brown and Rucci, right? Rucci had a family connection, not to diminish the recruiting battle whatsoever. I mean, that's a huge win no matter what, but his brother was on the team. Logan Brown was a Michigan guy. Yep. I think in my mind, the only guy that's comparable is Mertz. Just because he's a quarterback, he's out of state. Yep. And even he's a guy that we got in on early before he blew up. Like Tac would be, in my opinion, probably the biggest recruiting win. I don't think I can think of another one. You'd have to go way back
under Chris, right? Like I don't think there's anybody pre-Chris. I think you can go back to the Alvarez days where he took some guys out of St. Louis that everybody else wanted to. But man, for Paul Chris, this would be a monumental get.
Let's talk about that next tier, guys. Tac, obviously, we've covered a lot. We'll continue covering. Big time prospect. Oh, by the way, really quick, I don't know if you saw this. Bobby April's been down there so often, he has a sandwich named after him at a local restaurant.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, so does Ohio State's linebackers coach. So they've both been after him a lot. The next tier, guys, you talked about Joe Crocker. Big kind of, to me, looks raw, a little raw, but a big physical offensive lineman, great size. Khalil Tate is the other guy I wanted to, in this segment, really touch on. I loved his film. Like big, long lever defensive back, athlete type. Where does he project best to you? Do you think he's a safety or could he be a receiver, maybe a corner?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally he comes in as a safety. I think he fits really nicely with what Wisconsin needs at the safety. Traditionally, the last couple of guys they brought in, you look at Hunter Wohler, you look at in the last class, like Austin Brown, they're both strong safety type guys. They're going to come downhill. They're going to hit you in the mouth. Khalil Tate is more of a lengthy safety, similar to like a Scott Nelson, very different games, but lengthy, can cover a lot of ground back there. Isn't necessarily going to be the guy who's going to lay the boom, but he's going to be able to cover a ton of ground, get hands and break up passes. And so I think safety is a good fit for him, but he can play wide receiver. He can play cornerback, like you mentioned. I think one of the things that Jim Leonard and Hank Poteet have done really good in this class is they've really gone after guys who in the defensive backfield that can play cornerback or safety, give them some flexibility. I think you saw this spring, they were short on bodies at safety. And I think they saw, hey, we really need to be able to bring in guys that can do a couple different things. They got a guy last cycle, Avion Jones, who can do that. Mm-hmm. But I think that Tate probably projects best to safety, but I think that he is the type of athlete that you want to bring in and then you figure it out later, right? Like 6'3", 180 pounds, can play both ways. Those are the guys you want on your football team and let it go once they get on campus.
For sure. And the film on him is awesome. Like you can see the athleticism play up. Coming up, guys, we're going to keep Matt on the show. We got one more segment with him. It's going to be awesome. We're going to talk about some of the underrated guys maybe coming in this weekend that he really likes and maybe get a general feel for where the recruiting class is. Does he like the progress, momentum? How's it trending? All that and more coming up. But first, today's show is brought to you by Built Bar. I've talked about Built Bar a ton on this show. It has been awesome for me. I've for a long time, I've vacillated between protein, when I'm trying to be really healthy, protein bars that you almost have to choke down. You know they're healthy, but they taste terrible. And then I just fall off that wagon and fall into a big vat of peanut butter cups. So Built Bar is really that middle ground, man, where it's healthy. Your body likes it, though. It tastes like a candy bar. I've talked to you about my kids raiding my Built Bar stash because they think it's a candy bar, and I've low-key tricked them into sort of eating healthy, which is a big dad win for all you dads out there. Built Bar, again, 20 grams of protein, not a lot of sugar, under 200 calories, tons of great flavors. The website's awesome. Go there today. You get a special offer from Locked On. So not only can you eat healthy, you put a little more bang into your wallet as well. Go to Built.com, promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15. Get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15. So they know that we sent you at Built.com. Guys, thank you again for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. Really appreciate the community we're trying to build. If you have a chance, go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey. We're trying to figure out what you guys like. How can we make the show better for you? There's a quick survey. If you want to fill it out, you will be entered to win a $100 gift card. from Ticketmaster so you can go to your favorite sporting events. That's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. We're going to bring Matt Belz back on, Sports Illustrated Fan Nation, Badgers content provider. I want to talk a little bit. We talked to big name guys. There's also, in my opinion, some really interesting under the radar. I don't necessarily want to say under the radar, but players that haven't been talked about as much coming up on this weekend. What are a couple of your favorites coming up that maybe don't have the hype yet?
Yeah, so for this weekend, I think two guys that jump out to me are Nate Johnson, cornerback out of Clearwater, Florida. He's unranked. When you look at his profile, doesn't have a ranking from 247 Sports or Rivals. 5'10", really good athlete, similar to Tate, plays both ways at a good high school down in Florida, and he's got a really nice offer list despite that ranking. I was talking to him a little bit yesterday, and he's really pumped for this visit. He's also going to go on visits to Boston College, Pitt, and Washington State. But you look at his film, and the kid can move. He's got good hips. He really is the full package, and I think he's got the athleticism to be somebody that can do a lot of nice things in Wisconsin's defense. I think Jim Leonard and Hank Poteet have done a really good job with him, and we'll see kind of where that goes. But the other guy is quarterback Lincoln Keinholz, and really another guy where he's kind of come out of nowhere, really unranked once again, according to Rivals, but 247's got him as the number 40 quarterback in the nation. Has a really nice offer list as well. That's kind of jumped and grown here this spring, but he just narrowed it down to Wyoming, Washington, and North Dakota State. And well, those names don't sound like overly flashy. You look at it, and he's a South Dakota kid. Wyoming, North Dakota State, those two have done really good at getting quarterbacks out there recently. And he still had a bunch of other Big 10 and Big 12 offers that he kind of pushed aside to focus on those four. So I think you look at his athleticism, ability to move in the pocket, outside of the pocket, he would bring something different that the Badgers haven't necessarily had the past couple of years. I know Cone could move a little bit, but I think that Keinholz is somebody that can help the offense a little bit if he were to choose the Badgers. And I think that Wisconsin's in a good spot for him.
Yeah, let's go to the quarterback first. So Lincoln is a guy, to me, he feels like a guy potentially blowing up right now. He's in the midst of it when he shut it down and said, these are the four schools. Offers were piling in. I know Minnesota, Iowa was in on him a little bit. He looks like a guy that maybe fell through some recruiting cracks when you watch the film. Like enough size, definitely athletic. I like the arm. Yep. I think he'd be a great get at this point for the quarterback room.
Yeah, especially after you've missed on a couple of the other guys they wanted early. But you look at him, 3-sport star, all-state in football, basketball, baseball. I mean, multi-sport athletes. You look at it, the NFL loves it. Colleges love it. I think he's a guy that, just like you said, kind of was swept under the rug just because he played in South Dakota, an under-recruited area. And all of a sudden, teams were able to go and see this kid throw and play basketball and what he can do. And they were like, oh, okay, this is somebody that we should give a shot to. And I think that's a good fit for Wisconsin. They missed out on a couple other guys and were really able to prioritize him now. And we'll see if they can close a deal. I think that's the biggest thing here for them, because after him, I don't know where they necessarily go other than some guys they have coming in for camp.
Is this the first time he's been on campus?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is definitely an opportunity and by the way, we didn't mention this. There are some committed prospects on campus too, which I always think is really important, right? Having a couple guys that have been committed to the program. Tyler Jancy's on campus. James Duran's on campus. I think JT Taylor's on campus for this visit. So there's some people there to hopefully help build that momentum as well. If the Badgers don't land Keinholz, is there a pivot spot? I know you mentioned some other guys coming up. There's a few in-state guys that at least have generated a little hype. Where do they turn next at quarterback? Because in my opinion, this is one of the biggest needs in this class. They have to add somebody to that quarterback room.
Yeah, I totally agree, especially after they skipped taking a quarterback in 2020. The numbers are just low, right? Like they brought in Marshall Howe as a walk-on, which is great. And he was a 3-star addition as a walk-on. You can't beat that. But at the same time, they need scholarship guys to compete. So when Mertz exhausts his eligibility, they've got guys ready. And so I think they miss out on him. You've got a couple kids coming in for camp this summer, really tomorrow for a couple of them. One of the kids is the starting quarterback at IMG. So there's an opportunity that if they needed to pivot quick, they could. But I think right now, all of their eggs are in for Lincoln, and they want him first and foremost before they move on anywhere else.
Give me and I know things are always changing in recruiting. It's hard to pin it down. Give me a rough over-under commits that come out of this weekend, and not necessarily on Monday or Tuesday after the weekend, but from this group coming into campus. How many do we get?
Yeah, so I think not counting the 2 that they already have, like you mentioned, which I do think will play an important role, especially with some offensive line guys. I want to say that they're going to get at least half of these guys. I want to say 5 is the number. I could see it going anywhere between 3 and 7. I think 7 would be like an absolute win, but Wisconsin has done really good with these official visits in the past. You look at what they did in 2019 in the 2020 classes when they actually had everything opened up. And I think they've got a shot to do really well here. But I think 4 or 5 is probably a safe guess at this point.
Is Keinholz in that 4, do you think? Just going by your gut?
I think Wisconsin's in a good spot for him right now. We'll see. I think the team to watch out for would be North Dakota State, who's actually done phenomenally well with quarterbacks. And there's the hometown area draw, which I think would be the only thing that I think, because Washington's also in on Avery Johnson. They have him coming in for an official visit, another guy the Badgers had offered. And so I don't know how much Washington's putting into that effort as much as Wisconsin is. So I think Wisconsin is the leader and the team to beat, but I still think that North Dakota State would be a team that you never know. Just if a kid wants to stay home, if he sees it's the better fit for him, he might turn down Power 5 interest to stay closer.
And I want to pivot to this a little bit. We've talked on the show before. Badger fans have talked about the slow start to this recruiting class. For a long time, it was just Tyler Jancy. Obviously, that picked up. The Badgers added 5 commits pretty quickly. And I think some of this is tied to the fact that there was a lot of coaching turnover. Our recruiting department was kind of getting put together, and there's been some debate on how or why that took a while to do for whatever reason, right? There's been debate on that. But now that those pieces are in place, does it feel like our recruiting momentum, the Badgers recruiting momentum, is kind of back on track, chugging along? And at the end of this class, is this going to feel like a typical Badger class?
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a class that's going to wow you with, oh my gosh, they got 5 4-star guys or 6, 4-star kids and 2 5-stars or anything like that. But I do think that this is going to feel like a really talented class. It should be a bigger class, which I think will help. They have 18 graduating seniors, so it could be anywhere in the lower 20s. But really, I think they missed out on having guys come in for these official visits last year quite a bit. And with the pandemic in 2020, I think not having a full staff on hand to be able to be there. I mean, when I was at spring practice, there wasn't a more busy person in that room than Mickey Turner. He was kissing hands and talking to everybody. Like he was bouncing around, and he's a tremendous ambassador for the program. But I think that having some other guys on campus that are just dedicated to this is going to really help the group, so that Jim Leonard, Hank Poteet, Bob Bostek can really focus on the 2 or 3 guys that are on campus for their position group, and not have to say, okay, I also have to make sure I have to touch in and talk with this kid and this kid and this kid. Just really kind of narrow the focus for the other coaches on staff. So I think that's going to be a big part. And I know that last year they missed out on that with football recruiting and on-campus visits for games. So now this is a big chance for them, especially with a bigger class and the fact that they really just have a handful of commits right now, 6.
I want to kind of finish on this, but I would be remiss, I feel like, if I didn't get your take on the bigger picture here, with as close as you follow the program and as kind of the day-to-day coverage you provide. I think multiple things can be true here. I think the fact that it took a long time to put together, I don't think the recruiting department came together as quick as it probably should have. I also think it can be true that the end result is pretty good, right? Like, so I want to get your feel on, do Badger fans have, there was a pretty large group that was a little critical of the process and how it played out. Is there something there where Badger fans maybe have a foot to stand on that? It probably shouldn't have taken that long, and it probably did impact recruiting. However, I also want to get your take on Mickey Turner being the guy, because I feel like that's a pretty good fit.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely think that fans have a right to be like, Saeed Khalif left a long time ago, and it took a long time for them to identify it. They lost a couple in-state kids that I really think that they probably, in a normal case, would have won. Like, those were recruiting battles that I think they had a really good shot at, specifically Carson Hinsman. I think that was the one that stung the most. But you look at it, I think that you're right, that it cuts both ways, but I would lean towards, hey, they probably should have gotten somebody. But I also think that Paul Chryst was probably a little leery after going with an external hire last time, going with Saeed Khalif, finding that there was some things where they didn't jive on ideas. And so he instead was like, I'm going to wait till the end of the year. I'm going to bring in my guy, a guy I trust, who I know is a good recruiter and who's going to be good for the role, in Mickey Turner. So I think in the end it worked out. But yeah, I do think that it did hurt their class last year for sure.
So let's finish on this. Mickey Turner in the role going forward. Is he going, because again, the classes that Wisconsin had under Khalif weren't all Khalif, right? Again, I think there's nuance to a lot of this, but I also think it'd be naive to say he didn't have a role in it. Is that the ceiling that Mickey Turner can potentially get this program back to a top 20-ish recruiting class?
I think so. I think it's all just going to be dependent on how many top tier prospects are in the Midwest, where Wisconsin's footprint is, right? Like, we know that geographically most kids stay within that 4-hour, 5-hour radius of where they live, which hurts Wisconsin, right? Like, Wisconsin has a lot of really good prospects inside the state from time to time, but then you have years like this year where there's one kid that they have an offer out to right now, and they have him committed. And I think he's going to be an electric playmaker. But at the same time, you got other schools who oftentimes frequent that top 15 who they can step outside their door and they've got 3 kids that are playing at the local high school, right? Like, so I think that they can get to a point where they're a top 25 recruiting team, but I don't think that you're looking at a team that's going to be top 10 and pushing for that all the time. Right. It's going to have to be the stars aligned for them to make that happen, especially 1 year, 2 years, etc.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Guys, he is Matt Belz. We really appreciate the time. Can you tell people again where to find your work? Because I think we get smarter by listening to people like you.
Allbadgers.com, at Twitter at Saved by the Bells. But I really appreciate you having me on, Ryan.
For sure. Let's do it again, man. Like, recruiting's always changing. All right, guys. Matt Belz coming up next on the show. We are going to get into kind of a wrap up of our conversation. And I want to talk a little bit more about potential coaching changes on the Wisconsin staff. But first, today's show is also brought to you by, sorry, I got wrapped up with recruiting talk there. Guys, thank you so much again for tuning into Locked On Badgers, making it your first listen every single day. Really, really appreciate the community we're building. We're getting more subscribers, more comments, and that's not reflective at all of me. It's reflective of the passion for this team and for really the guests that we've been able to bring on to generate some discourse. A lot more stuff coming up. I want to talk a little bit about kind of what Matt and I just talked about and the importance of this weekend. I want to wrap it up, put a little bow on it. This is gigantic, y'all. This weekend is huge, and it's huge because the top crown jewel prospect is coming in, with Tackett Curtis. But it's also huge because, to me, this is kind of a referendum on what was Paul Chryst has built in the recruiting department, right? This is the first chance for this newly built, this factory fresh recruiting department to come out there and really hit a home run and really knock it out of the park. And I'm so excited to see what happens because I'm hoping they crush it. Listen, I've been real, and I always try to keep it real on this show. I thought the recruiting department took too long to come together. I was frustrated by it, but I like what's there now. And now they have this group of 10-ish players coming on campus, headlined by Tac Curtis, one of the best linebackers in the country. Here's your chance, man. Like, it's not an easy recruitment, but you're not going to get a better chance in this class at a blue chip kid. This weekend is enormous. And the other guys too, right? So we talked about Tackett Curtis. Khalil Tate, I love his film. He would instantly, if he committed today, and I like a lot of the kids in the class. I've talked about this. I like Nate White a lot. I like Broderick Pierce a lot. And others, JT Taylor, I think has unique upside. Tyler Jancy fits the bill. James Durand is an inside guy. I like a lot of the guys we have committed. If Khalil Tate committed today, he would be my favorite commit in the class. I think you just don't find 6'3", 6'2" athletes that move like him with long levers. Matt talked about a body type of Scott Nelson, but he's more violent. Like, he's Scott Nelson with like a mentality Scott Nelson with like a Ronnie Lott mindset on film. Like, I love his film. He would be a tremendous addition to put on the back end. I would love to see if he can make it at corner. Like, I don't know if he can flip the hips. I don't know if he's quite quick enough, but having a 6'2", 6'3" corner, give you some Richard Sherman vibes out there, could press and be a little more physical. But whether he's a safety, a receiver, that's a big time visit, guys. And if we come out this weekend improving our stock there, maybe we close the deal on Tate. That's a huge addition. We're talking about some of the other guys. We talked about Joe Crocker. Another guy that we didn't talk about that I really like, we talked about it previously with John Garcia, the Sports Illustrated recruiting director. That's Mikhail Gardner coming up, the defensive tackle from Arizona. Kind of another wrecking ball, that's 6'3", 280-pound, just really violent mentality on the defense line, athletic, gets good push. And he's more of a tweener. He's not the Keanu Benton, but he's a guy that, if you pair him with Pierce, I think makes a really interesting and versatile defensive tackle, strong side defensive end combination. You can move those two chess pieces around a lot. Passing downs, maybe you kick them inside. Running downs, you kick them outside. That's another piece I'm really excited to see if they can close the deal there. This defensive line is going to be interesting to follow, guys. How many are they going to take? We have Howard coming up next week, and Jamel Howard, he's the 320-pound nose tackle, is more the Keanu Benton mold. I think he's a high priority. Is this a class where you take 4 defensive linemen? 3? I think you got to take at least 3. So maybe it's Pierce, Gardner this weekend, and Howard next weekend. Maybe that's your group there. So, yeah, guys, this is a huge weekend. I'm really excited to see it. It's an opportunity for this new recruiting department to take a big swing. And I'm very stoked to see what happens. Can they hit a double? Can they hit a home run? Or do they strike out? We don't really know, So we do know Madison in the summer can be pretty magical. Commits get up here, recruits get up here, interested prospects get up here, and it can flip their mindset a little bit because they're not expecting Madison. Now, y'all know what Madison's about. A lot of people don't. So I'm excited to see what happens there. Guys, once again, thank you so much for making Locked On Badgers your first listen every day. I appreciate you so, so much. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed the comments and the likes, and it's about building a community again. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank Matt for joining the show today. Make sure you check out his work. He's a fantastic follow on Twitter. When you're done here, guys, the other day we had, Locked On Big Board NBA draft content coming on. Make sure you check out the Locked On NBA Draft Big Board show. Like the show, subscribe. Thank you so much. And coming up, we have more content with the official visits. We have a basketball player, a former basketball player for the Badgers, jumping on the show. So the content's going to keep coming. Really appreciate y'all. Thank you so much, and we'll talk later.